How much has One UI changed since 1.0 to 8.0? Let's go. Samsung's had a pretty varied history when it comes to software. From the early TouchWiz days, which were just awful, feature-packed but awful, through to Samsung Experience, and now with One UI, they've had a pretty big history of trying to update things and make it more user sort of friendly as opposed to just throwing features at the software. That all changed at Samsung Developer Conference 2018 when Samsung took to the stage and announced One UI, a completely refreshed interface, one that was consistent across multiple devices that gave Samsung a software identity as opposed to just mismatched everywhere. They redesigned everything, from the quick panel to app icons and the way you interact. It all changed. So just to see how far One UI has come, I went and got the earliest version of One UI I could find, One UI 1.0 running on the Galaxy S8, and I'm going to compare it to what is pretty much final S25 Ultra running One UI 8 as well. Just for fun, I got One UI 2.0 running on a Galaxy S10 Plus, although I might save that for a future video when I compare every One UI version. Let me know if you want that and hit subscribe down below. I'm going to compare all of the major UI elements, so quick panel, notifications, app drawer, home screen, always on display, camera, settings, and a little bit of features as well, but it's going to be mostly how we interact, how it's changed, just to actually see if it's gotten better or was it better here on One UI 1.0. Also animations, because people care about that for some reason. All right, let's start with sort of the notification and the quick panel area. I'm going to start with One UI 1.0 and sort of show you how that was and then bring in One UI 8 afterwards. To get to the quick panel, it was a single swipe down, and then you had a small quick panel menu, and you also had your notifications. Take note of the fact that there was no blur in behind the notification panel. It was just darkened, and you'll see later that that changes. And then if you wanted to access the full expanded quick panel, a second swipe down brought all the toggles a little bit closer into the bottom 2/3 of the screen. Whole purpose is one-handed usage. That was why One UI or part of why One UI was called One, because it was one-handed. You also had the brightness slider there, which was a sort of thin line as opposed to what we have now. And you also noticed there was no media panel as well, or smart things. That wasn't ready yet. It did come in with One UI 2, which I could show you with the S10 Plus, but it wasn't there on the original. One thing I did note though was the settings icon was way easier to reach with One UI 1.0. It was way closer to where your thumb would be, making it easier to access settings, something that changes with the new version of One UI. And we fast forward to One UI 8. And One UI 8, we now have got a much different quick panel. You've got the notifications, which is a full panel on its own. There is no toggles. There is no settings. You can change it should you wish and go back to the old way, but the new way is there by default. You'll also notice that there is a blur in the background. So that background of the notification panel is blurred out versus what it is on One UI 1.0, which is just the darkened sort of shaded area. A swipe down from the top right brings down your quick panel and some toggles and settings. It's a very different looking quick panel now. So Samsung have kind of segmented it a little bit, as opposed to everything just being lumped in the quick panel. Samsung have created sections. So the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, for example, they're like connection settings. They've kind of separated them out because you always access those. Different on One UI 1 versus One UI 8. And what I also like too is you can swipe between the notification panel and the quick panel, left and right. Will take you back and forth between them. Obviously, it's very similar to the second swipe down on One UI 1, but it's just a different way of doing it on One UI 8. But annoyingly, that settings icon is so high up. I can't remember which One UI version changed it, but it irritated me and it hasn't changed back. I really wish the settings icon would be a little bit closer to reach, because again, that was the whole purpose of One UI when it started, was that one-handed reachability. And you notice too with One UI 8, you've got all the extra panels there. You've got like the smart things, the media panel. It sort of gives you more and easier access to them as opposed to needing to go into the app or find it in the settings. It's a lot more defined and there's more things you can do from the quick panel. Aside from the settings being so high up, I do feel One UI 8 gives us better functionality. Let me know which aesthetic you prefer though, because One UI had that white, clean look, whereas One UI 8 has kind of got this almost blended blur effect. You might not like that. You might prefer the old way. Next thing I want to go through is the navigation options. Copped a bit of heat in my previous video talking about the navigation buttons and how they've been around for so long. Just get rid of it already. Using the navigation buttons. This is how long they've been around for, since the Galaxy S8. This isn't a hardware video, but the Galaxy S8 had like a physical home button built underneath the screen. It's almost like a 3D touch style thing where you could press on it and it gives you feedback. That was removed because they realized they didn't need that. What I liked about it though is anytime you pressed that area, it took you back to home. It was the perfect way of bringing what was on the S7 and bringing it into the new era with the Galaxy S8. You could customize it as well, like the different pressure sensitivity that it had. You can go in the settings and change it. But Samsung brought in gestures with the Galaxy S8 and One UI 1. Now, they weren't the gestures that we have now. They are gestures that mimic the buttons and where they were. So in the settings, you go in and you can turn on the gestures, but they basically just gestures of where the home button was. So a swipe on the bottom right would be back, a swipe up in the middle would be home, and a swipe up on the left would be your recents. They had no other options. It was either buttons or that, or remove the gesture hint. That was it. There was no left or right side of the screen back swipe, which now that I've used that, it's so much better and so much easier, especially if you've got your phone in your left hand, you can just back swipe with that as opposed to needing to reach down to the bottom right corner to press it. It's consistent. One UI 8 still does have those legacy navigation buttons present, and you can bring back the navigation gestures from One UI 1 through Good Lock, so you can go in and get them more options to make it exactly the same as this, so it mimics the buttons, or you can just have the full screen gestures. That way you get more of the screen, so you can actually extend apps out to the bottom as opposed to having the buttons always there. And it's just, like I said, once your muscle memory gets used to that, it is much faster to interact with the phone. I know I talk about animations later, but you could tune the home gesture animation with One UI 8.1, with One UI 8.0 in Good Lock through the Home Up option. So there's just extra stuff. I did try and see what stuff we have here in Good Lock, and it's not as extensive. Next up, the home screen and sort of how that sort of plays out. And to be honest, we're not too far away from where we started. Obviously, there's a lot more, but in terms of how it presents, it's very similar. You can still activate an apps button in One UI 1, so that legacy apps button from Galaxy S7 is here, where you can go into the app screen through that in the home screen settings. You also have a lot of options for the home grid customization. So 5x6, 5x6 I think might be the biggest. Whereas I think on One UI 8, that kind of went away and you need Good Lock to bring it back, whereas it's just native here on One UI 1. There is Bixby Home when you swipe to the right as opposed to Google Discover. Terrible. And one of the first things I turned off when I when I had the Galaxy S8. You've just got regular widgets, whereas now they're a lot more stackable. But honestly, it's not too far away from where we are now. One UI 8, when you go into the home screen settings for that, you do see some extra stuff like app sizing and app labels. That's new. And you have options for the Google Discover page. It can be Google Discover or Samsung Free. Never choose Samsung Free. The widget experience is also stackable, so you can go in and stack widgets on top of each other to kind of save space on the home screen, which is nice as you can sort of swipe through different widgets that sort of are similarly sized. And you have home up customization, especially with DIY Home. You can literally move things anywhere around the screen and have it any way you like. I do have some videos sort of talking about that already. Maybe you can go check that out. But pretty much it's very similar. You've got your app dock down the bottom. You've got your apps and your widgets up in the top area. It's a very similar aesthetic between One UI 1 and One UI 8. The apps page is kind of part of that. When you swipe up on the screen, you'd get taken to the apps. With One UI 1, it is just a horizontal scroll. One UI 8, obviously you get the vertical scrolling now. And the other difference is you've got the Finder or the search bar at the top of One UI 1, whereas more in line with one-hander reachability, it's down the bottom on One UI 8. It balances out in terms of settings at one area at the top and search at the bottom in another. Come on, Samsung. Be cohesive. The last 4 years has been a lot. When my daughter was born, we as a family had a lot to cope with. We moved house and downsized from a 4-bedroom house to a small 2-bedroom unit. My wife probably had to recover from one of the worst pregnancy illnesses that I've seen, where she was bedridden for just 9 months straight, leaving me kind of to raise our son and try and work and balance a life, not on my own. She definitely tried, but most of the time she was unable to. It made life incredibly challenging for all of us, not just my wife, not just my son, but for me as well. Then to top all of that off, when we were sort of recovering from that process and growing back as a family, I decided to start a YouTube channel. Being a full-time creator on YouTube is amazing. I get to be here with my kids at home. I get to coach my son's football team and be present with my wife and my family. It's great. It's got so many advantages. But there are moments where the pressures of all of it can just hit you. I put on weight. I stopped sleeping properly. I stopped prioritizing my own health and mental well-being because I thought everyone else needed it first. These are all demands that you kind of just start to put on yourself. And as a father, I thought I could shoulder all of it on my own without sort of communicating or letting anyone in. But all that ends up happening then is you just start hurting people around you because you don't quite know how to manage your emotions properly. Access to therapy and just kind of talking to someone, it's a hard thing to admit that you need, but it's also a hard thing to actually go and do because you have to almost go out of your way to do it. Leave the house, make appointments, and then you've just got to put yourself in the hands of someone that you might not even know is right for you until you've spent some time with them. Access to a BetterHelp therapist kind of changes all of that. A therapist will listen, ask questions, and help you see things from a different perspective. They can give you advice and techniques so you can start to make positive changes in the life that you're living. BetterHelp is the paid partner of this video, and they are on a mission to make starting therapy so much easier. You fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist as soon as possible. And you can easily switch therapists at no extra cost if the one you're with isn't the right fit for you. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform that you can trust. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/techwithbenefits to get 10% off your first month of therapy. Thanks to BetterHelp for supporting this video. And then we go into the settings menu. Now, I'm not really going to dive too much into the different features and what's where and what's what. I just want to look at how settings is laid out. And really, where we started with oneui 1, we're pretty much there with oneui 8 too. oneui 1 has sections for certain items. It's got colors that's sort of associated with the different things as well. Things are a bit more condensed, so Samsung haven't got as many menu options in the settings, but some people might prefer that. And it still has the one-handed elements where you've got drag down to reach things a little bit more easily, and you've got the settings sort of text at the top third and the one-handed stuff in the bottom 2/3. And the Samsung account is much smaller in oneui 1. oneui 8 is a lot more purposeful with where the settings and headings and stuff is laid out. It's all kind of categorized a little bit differently. The color coding makes a bit more sense as well. Everything's kind of grouped and fashioned a little bit more, I guess, obvious as opposed to oneui 1. There's a little bit more pop of color too with oneui 8 with some of the icons and some of the way things have been color coded. Also like with oneui 8 that there's a predictive back gesture. It is in a labs setting, but the fact that you can sort of swipe on the back swipe and it predicts that movement, it's a nice touch and it sort of previews what you were going back to as well. So yeah, the settings hasn't really changed too much. Advanced features though has. And I know I said that I'm not really going to break down features too much, but there's just too much in here that I need to sort of showcase. In oneui 1.0, there was some nice sort of smart capture stuff. So this is all stuff that's pretty much standard now, but back then it was kind of new and needed some toggles. So the smart capture was the screenshot stuff where you could scroll capture to sort of scroll down, and some more intelligent options like writing on the screen were part of that. There was also a toggle to reduce animations, which I guess you could say is kind of like a really primitive version of what Home Up has now with the gesture tuning. But like I said, very primitive, and it didn't really do too much. It was just there as a toggle and kind of helped speed things up, but didn't really, I don't know, you judge for yourself. Other features too that have now kind of been part of connected devices and part of the ecosystem, like call and text on other devices, were back then considered advanced features, whereas now they're like a core ecosystem toggle that is part of the connected devices menu instead of advanced features. And this is more of a hardware thing, but there's a Bixby key on the Galaxy S8, and there needed to be a menu just for that, which most people probably just avoided. Then with oneui 8, you have an expansion of what's available. There's a labs menu, which Samsung introduced a few years ago to kind of bring new features in, and eventually they make their way out of labs. oneui 8 still has that. And that's where, like I said, that predictive backswipe comes from. There's also options to toggle and tweak multi-window. That's part of it too. And then because this didn't have screen recording, now we do. oneui 8 with advanced features has screen recording options too. Now I did plan to do a DeX comparison here between oneui 1 and oneui 8. However, Samsung DeX is not, I guess, capable with plug and play on the Galaxy S8. So I'll do one of two things. I'm going to either buy a Dex dock. Yeah, I went ahead and ordered a Dex station and make it work that way, or find a phone that has oneui 1 that can run Dex plugged in like this, and I'll try that. You let me know, but I do intend maybe of doing a full video like that. Let me know in the comments. Then we're going to look at the camera UI and how you can navigate around that. Again, I feel like we're not too far away, although Samsung have made drastic changes with oneui 7, which has kind of separated it a lot. With oneui 1.0, if you had a multiple camera setup, the zoom options were represented by trees. Now, this is a single camera, so you can't see any of those options in the camera app. But S10 Plus that I've got, you can see that, 3 trees, 2 trees, and 1 tree. Got a phone here. I filmed it like an hour ago. I should know this. Yes, I did know it. By the way, the S10 Plus, the camera button or the power button is so high up on the phone. It's absurd. But it had that tree system. I understand the logic. It was a visual thing. But with oneui 8, it's just now numbers. Way simpler. The camera modes are highlighted with a white backdrop as opposed to just the word being highlighted in white. It's just a white backdrop as you scroll through. Something else that was interesting is there was no more tab. So it was basically just all of the modes were just there down the bottom, and there was no extra tab to go to find more. And what I also realized too is that the app had less toggles. So if you wanted to do a lot, like maybe change video resolution, you had to go into the settings to do all of that, which is really strange. Again, something that was like a one-handed sort of interface didn't really have in the camera anyway a lot of one-handed options. You had to go to the settings to do a lot of things. With oneui 8, Samsung changed a lot of things. They brought back in that one-handed element with a little menu toggle in the bottom right corner of the screen that allowed you to sort of pretty much change everything in the camera mode that you're in, whether that be resolution, whether that be aspect ratio. It's all down in that bottom third. You also had the swiping between the options is a lot easier because there's less down there, and everything that you might want to access not as frequently is in a more tab, and then you can drag stuff out and reposition it in the bottom as you wish. It was just a tweak to make everything back to what oneui was, which was that one-handed use case and being able to do everything in that bottom 2/3 of the screen as opposed to needing to always sort of juggle the phone around to use it. And then the last stop is animations. I started first with the always on display to the lock screen to then the home screen, and I just wanted to see that transition and then go back the other way. The Galaxy S8 had like a unique wallpaper where it kind of all flowed from one process to the next. So from always on display to lock screen to home screen, the wallpaper kind of fluidly moved between those. But when you went back the other way, like from home screen to lock screen to always on display, it didn't have that transition. It kind of just blacked out and then always on display would appear. Didn't have the power to sort of handle that. oneui 8, and this is probably a hardware thing, especially with the display on the S25 Ultra, you've got that option now for the background to sort of be removed and the sort of transition from always on display to lock screen to be really smooth, and then into the home screen as well. As long as you've got the same wallpaper, that also is smooth. And then going back the other way, there's no gap anymore. The always on display is just right there, ready to go. And again, if you go from that lock screen to always on display, that transition is sort of flawless. And then the animations just in general. So I turned off all of the good lock tuning that I'd done on oneui 8, just so it's sort of fair and you can see the native animations. But what I noticed with oneui 1 is they did try. Like, it wasn't as if it was a disaster. They tried to have it so where you opened the app from, it launched the animation at least from that corner. And then when you went back to sort of home screen or back, it went back into that corner. It didn't go back to where the app was from. It just went back into that corner. So I tried it for like the bottom right, the bottom left, and the top left. And each one just went back into the corner, back into the corner, back into the corner. I thought, okay, they at least gave it a go. oneui 8, Samsung have kind of almost perfected it now, where if you open it from there, it goes up from that spot and it sort of expands out from the app. And then when you go back, it sort of bounces back into that spot as well. I thought, okay, they've definitely refined that. I don't remember thinking about it too much with oneui 1, but you can obviously see now which one is visually better. And widgets too. The widgets were the same as what the apps were. It opened it from that area and went back to sort of that area but that was it. Whereas now the widget sort of retracts back into itself and is a lot cleaner to look at. Filmed this whole bit and didn't press record. I also filmed some stuff around Galaxy AI, but I wasn't sure whether I was going to include it in the video because, like I said, this is more of a user interaction and how you actually use the interface as opposed to features. But seeing as how Galaxy AI has become such a huge part of oneui and its update release cycle in the last couple of years, I thought I'd just showcase the fact that we've got a bevy of AI features now. And obviously that's now part of it, whereas it wasn't obviously back when the Galaxy S8 and also more importantly when oneui 1.0 launched. So that's kind of where we started with oneui and where it's ended up now. As you can see, the early hallmarks of what we have are still kind of present. That one-handed interactions, the way that the settings menu is laid out, it's all kind of still there. It was a great starting point. But as people use their phones, the screens got bigger as well. Things had to change a little bit. So things like the quick panel are different. Things like apps are different, like the camera UI, and animations with hardware improving have become a lot more fluid. You let me know which oneui version was your favorite, and I'll try and include it all in my oneui 1 to oneui 8 complete comparison with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then 8 to finish it off. It's going to be a big video. Anyway, hit subscribe for that. Go check me out on all my socials, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll do this.